So this is interview number 1 for final thesis assessment, contractor management and facility management. And I'm sitting down with a real estate analyst and just conducting the first recorded interview. This is Johnny.
Hi, this is Johnny.
And Johnny, just tell me a little bit about your role and how it pertains to facilities and real estate and the importance of working with good contractors and construction workers.
Sure, so I work with a home developer. Right now we're doing a big development on a lake here in West Texas. And one of the things that we have to deal with it in this situation with being on such a remote piece of land is that there's not a lot of infrastructure, presently there. So on a daily basis, we deal with, getting estimates from contractors, to install things such as roads. And a big one right now is power lines to get the plots of land ready to be built. And so a big issue that we've dealt with in the past is, some people will give us an estimate for a road, and some of them they'll come in way lower. And so the problem is if you take the low estimate, a lot of times it'll be a decent road, but it'll be a road that doesn't last and it tears up after a couple of years. So a big factor that we have to focus on is finding contractors that provide a good service and a quality service that build a lasting road that doesn't have to be redone every couple of years and helps keep the property values consistent, things like that. So contractors are really important in that respect.
So is there any specific process that you and your colleagues have to undergo when vetting and deciding on a specific contractor?
Yeah, so in that area where we are, West Texas, is pretty remote, and so it's a pretty small community out there in terms of finding contractors who do certain types of work. And so we really just have to focus on building a strong network in the regions that we work in. So that usually comes with, talking to brokers and home builders and other people who have done work out there to find out, or engineering firms and things like that. We've got a lot of work from engineering firms who refer us to contractors who they trust and who've done good work for them in the past, and kind of build up a network in that area of, quality professionals who can provide the contracting and the construction that we need.
Has there been any type of severe issues that the firm you're with has experienced with builders and contractors and people hired for these jobs?
A lot of the issues could stem from not always getting exact estimates in writing, or sometimes miscommunication in certain areas about what was expected and an estimate of things like that. For example, a power line we're doing right now, the guy has given us one estimate for an estimated plot of land that we sent him the information for, but by word of mouth you can't really go off of that because there's sometimes miscommunication and, was it this amount of road that actually needed to be done, or how long actually was it? So it's always good to get stuff in writing to have the firm, commitment and communication between whatever deal is going on, so that the projects don't get messed up and the pricing doesn't get messed up, and the contractors know what they're putting into it, so they know, how much effort, what kind of quality materials they want to use, things like that. So communication is really important, especially in an area right now, in a remote kind of area.
Are you able to expand on maybe some of the long-term ramifications of COVID and the impacts COVID has had on the contractors you're hiring and the price of jobs and ensuring quality and the jobs you hire these guys for? Has COVID had any type of serious impact on that?
Yeah, well, one thing that has been a big impact in terms of pricing is the fact that during COVID, a lot of work, a lot of construction, a lot of projects were really pushed back or postponed, for a certain period of time. So we're at a point now, pretty much a year past the height of COVID, and we're really looking to get, kick-started on a lot more projects and kick-starting more development and getting estimates and things like that. So, but the problem is right now is that so is everybody else. So there's kind of a super high demand for all these jobs and these projects that were pushed back, pushed forward a year or so. And so it's raising prices. It's causing a lot of people to maybe resort to working with people that didn't want to, or kind of selling for maybe a material or contractor they don't normally use. So it's the timeline has been pushed a lot. So that's raised prices, and forcing people to settle for maybe things they wouldn't want to settle for in the past.
Okay. Are there any contractors that your company has worked with long term that will provide a certain quality, a certain level of work, a certain standard that they'll meet? Is there a long term relationship with any of the contractors you work with?
Not specifically at the moment on this lake project, but the way that you overcome that is we we contact nearby. There's some larger cities in the proximity of the lake we're working on, and so what we do is we go in for to these engineering firms or firms that do work in real estate and development and construction, and we really try to work with them to try to get referrals from them to the highest quality contractors and people that have done work for them. And so we kind of overcome the gap of not having those built-in relationships and kind of trust the word of these big firms that do a lot of work for the government and have been well established, and they have the connections to the contractors that we might not know or might not be accessible through the internet and things like that, but they know the people personally. So the bigger engineering firms and stuff, we go through and get referrals from them.
And have you had to find attorneys and legal personnel to help you establish documentation for these contractors you decide to hire, and how has that process been?
Usually, yeah, that's part of the vetting process. And like I said, the engineering firms we work for, they've done all that stuff, and they make sure. The big thing is having the liability insurance for these contractors or people who do any kind of work, because obviously there's a lot of liability there, and lawsuits can be costly, especially in a situation where we work where there's property owners associations and there may be people already living there. So any liability insurance is really important in being vetted, and having a history of done good work and things like that, and contractors and construction people that have avoided mishaps in the past like that is really important to focus on, knowing that they have the insurance covered and things like that.
Has your company ever been sued over a project where a contractor messed up?
Not to my knowledge in the past, but it does happen where maybe the project wasn't playing well enough, and maybe like a retaining wall falls out where it may have not been the best position for that to be in. Like someone built a house at kind of near the bottom of a hill near the lake, and so they just built up this retaining wall, and after a year or two, the thing just fell apart. And so that's a situation where somebody could be sued or somebody blames somebody else. But in reality, it was just a problem with the planning. But situations do come up like that, especially when, you're building houses and you're selling them to other people. If something breaks or there's a architectural failure or things like that, it does come up. So yes, that's a possibility.
And then do a lot of the contractors that your company has to hire and manage, do a large percentage of them require draws and upfront payments?
Typically, it depends on who you're getting the work from. So, for example, with some of the power lines we're putting in, it's done through big energy companies that are pretty institutional. So, in a situation like that, they really sometimes they do require some money up front, but they really want to plan ahead and make sure they're working with somebody who has credibility and the actual means to pay for big projects and things like that. So on the other side of it, contracts and stuff, they also sometimes vet the people they want to do the service with, because if it's a $20,000-$30,000 power line installation or something like that, they're obviously going to want some sort of verification that they're going to get paid in a situation like that. So
Okay. Well, hey man, I've got to do 4 or 5 other interviews, and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me and discuss this. And thanks again, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks.
Cheers.